Hello, everybody, and welcome into another special edition of SEC football here on the voice of college football. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out what we're trying to build here. I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you again for that. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Another week in SEC football, another week of college football down. We're almost halfway through the season, which is happy to say, but also sad to say. Things are starting to clear up for us, and this brings us to another edition of power rankings. Now, remember, this is basically who I would favor on a neutral field, who would win. So that's how I do this. And let's start at the bottom. I don't think this is going to be any surprise to anyone. Number 16 is Mississippi State. I was actually pretty impressed with Michael Van Buren, honestly, for his first start versus my Longhorns. I thought he looked pretty good. I think there's a bright future for him ahead. I don't know if it's with Mississippi State and Jeff Lebby, because I don't think Jeff Lebby's for the long there, but that's my opinion. Overall, Mario Craver made some plays. Kevin Coleman made a couple catches on the ground. They did a decent job as well. With Kevon Lee out as well, they're starting running back. So not too bad for the Bulldogs, but they are number 16 for me. And I'm going to tell you where my tiers end for certain areas of this, because I do think you can argue in certain tiers of where they rank. If you want to do that, that's fine. But this is the end of my just god-awful bad tier. This is the worst team. They belong in their own tier. We jump into this next tier. This is going to be Florida. Florida still has some talent on their team. Are they as talented as like the team composite would say? No, they aren't. They're not that good, but overall pretty solid. It's going to be interesting how they handle the quarterback situation going forward, whether that be DJ Lagway or Graham Mertz. They both played in the Mississippi State game prior to the bye this week. DJ Lagway was actually 7 of 7 in that game. Graham Mertz, I think, was 19 of 21. So they have two good options there, honestly. It's just the surrounding talent around him. Will Eugene Wilson get back healthy and produce? Elijah Badger and those guys at running back. Is Montreal Johnson all the way healthy? It's the defense. The defense is not good other than the linebacker, James. So we'll see what they do, but this is the 15th best team to me. Could they move up? Yeah, and that's why I said I have this tiered off. My next team is Vanderbilt. Honestly, a surprise team. They're 2-2. They could be 3-1 if they would have beat Missouri in overtime. Diego Pavia has definitely made a difference for this team. They're not an easy out anymore. Mississippi State is that easy out now. Vanderbilt is not that. They're at least somewhat talented on the offensive side with him, and he brings a grit and toughness I don't think they've had in a very long time. And then you have Jerry Kill on staff too, who knows what he's doing. Like wherever he's gone, the teams have done well, whether that be New Mexico or whether that be Minnesota. He's done a good job there, and that's why Vanderbilt at 14. They need to prove a little bit to me, just a little bit more, and they can move up. They can definitely move up. This is a very fluid situation. The only team I could see not moving up the whole year out of this rankings is Mississippi State, and that's why I have Vanderbilt at 14. Could they move up? Absolutely. Number 13, we're still in that same tier as Auburn. Peyton Thorne had a really good game, guys. He had a legitimately good game. He was hitting passes deep. He was athletic, got out of the pocket, scrambled around, made plays that way as well. They have weapons, and Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, and Keandre Lambert-Smith, who had a good game. Jarquez Hunter had a good game at running back. Their offense as a whole looked pretty damn good versus Oklahoma. They actually looked better versus Oklahoma than Tennessee did. The problem is when it came down to it, as we've seen with this team, they make a crucial turnover. Kip Lewis brings it back for Oklahoma, intercepts the ball, brings it back for a pick six, and that is why I have Auburn at 13. You cannot make the type of critical mistakes they continue to make, and it's the pattern, guys. So I believe this is who you are at this point. If you wouldn't have made this pattern, there's a good chance you're undefeated at this point. So unbelievable how this just keeps happening. I have Auburn at 13. Number 12, I do have Arkansas. I've been impressed with Arkansas. They are nowhere near as bad as I thought. I actually picked him in the game versus A&M. I thought Taylor Green was going to be able to make enough plays. He was not able to do that. Jaquindon Jackson had a decent game for them as well. I know he rushed for a touchdown in that game, but Marcel Reed and A&M were too much for Arkansas. Their defense still isn't great, and honestly, both teams on the field that day, neither of the defenses stood out to me. But overall, both offenses, and especially Arkansas's, looks pretty good to me. Could they move up? Absolutely. Again, we're still in that same tier, and this is probably going to be the longest tier of the list. Number 11, I have Oklahoma. Did they make the right decision? I think so, but Michael Hawkins is definitely limited passing the football, guys. He's not a great passer of the football as of now. Do I think he will get better? Absolutely, I do. It was his first start. You have 5 wide receivers out for Oklahoma. They need to get some of those guys back healthy for the Red River rivalry in a couple weeks, especially Deion Burks, who I do think will come back. Honestly, out of all the guys they're missing, I think that might be the only guy that does come back. Nick Anderson's not coming back. Jaden Gibson's not coming back. The other guys are escaping my mind, but Deion Burks is the most important. He's your best wide receiver, so you need to get him back. Jaquez Petaway did look pretty good in this game. JJ Hester also looked decent. But overall, they still really can't run the ball, and that wasn't a great Auburn defense. You should have been able to run the ball better, so I have them at 11. Again, still in that same tier. A&M at 10 for me. I've been impressed ever since they moved to Marcel Reed. Like I said, he fits into the Colin Klein system of offense way better. Colin Klein wants to run an offense basically like he played in. He wants to run the quarterback a decent amount. He wants to get his athletes on the edges and beat the angles of the defense in the running game. And then occasionally he will attack you deep vertically to stretch the field for that running game. But it's all based on the run. And Marcel Reed's a better runner than Connor Wegman. And honestly, he's protecting the football better than Connor Wegman. Connor Wegman had 2 interceptions on the year. Marcel Reed has 0 in more games. So they made the right decision there. They are limited at the wide receiver position. They do not have great wide receivers right now. That is something they need to hit hard in the transfer portal going forward and recruiting. Offensive line has been better than last year, but not great. But overall, this is a solid team. I had them at 8-4 before the season. I think that's what you're going to get. And this is where we jump into that next tier, guys, for me. Number 9, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. And you're wondering how I put them this low? It's because you lost to Kentucky, and I can't put Kentucky below you, and I can't put some of these other teams below you, but this is a different tier for me. I do think Ole Miss is better than the teams I've mentioned by a decent amount, so that's why I tiered this off and why I'm telling you that there's tiers. Unimpressed. Very unimpressed. I never really believed in Lane Kiffin, honestly, to win big games, and he can't even beat Kentucky, who I think is a solid team, but they're not a playoff team or anything of that nature. They're like the 20th best team in the country, and you lost them at home. Unacceptable. Cannot happen. You have way more talent than them. I take that back. You don't have way more talent. You have more talent. You don't have way more talent. You have a better quarterback for sure. I don't like Jackson Dart. I think he's highly overrated, but he is better than Brock Vandergriff. You have more weapons on the outside with Trey Harris and those guys. Priest Horn at tight end, who only made like 1 catch the whole game, I think. So Ole Miss is number 9 for me. They let me down yet again, as they always do, because Lane Kiffin seems to choke. Lane Kiffin is who everyone thought Steve Sarkisian was a couple years ago. That's who Lane Kiffin is. Number 8 is Kentucky, the Michigan of the SEC. I was high on Kentucky going into the year. I had them at 8-4. It's funny, though. During our SEC Live, which is out at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, guys, go check it out. I said that Kentucky was a disappointment for me because I had them 8-4 and they were 2-2, and I don't think they would be 8-4. They could be 8-4 again, so maybe I was right. But Kentucky, very impressed. Brock Vandergriff did have his best game passing the ball, and that is needed because they have basically everything else. That defense is nasty. The front 7, especially the back 4, is questionable, especially if Malik Hairston is going to miss more time. But really good everywhere else other than the quarterback position. The offensive line is pretty good. They have good wide receivers with Barry and Brown and those guys. But overall, good, solid football team. The most average football team I can think of in the SEC. That's why I'm at number 8. And they can definitely move up. We'll have to see. Number 7, I do have Missouri. They are undefeated, but I've just been unimpressed by Missouri, guys, like very unimpressed. They beat Boston College, who was just in a struggle fest with Western Kentucky. Yes, Thomas Castellanos was out, but still. And then Boston College beat an overrated Florida State team, and that's why they're thought of so highly. So is Boston College a solid team? Yeah, they're like an 8-4 team, but you were at home and you almost lost that game. That's unacceptable. You gave up 300 yards passing Thomas Castellanos. That's unacceptable. You're not giving the ball to Luther Burden enough. That is unacceptable. This team has just been, I mean, they're right where I thought they'd be. I thought they'd be an 8-4 team. Everyone else thought they'd be a playoff team. I never thought Missouri was going to be a playoff team. Everyone overrated them because of what they did last year. Guys, they're outliers every season in college football. Missouri was an outlier last year. They're coming back to the average this year. I had them at 8-4, and that's with a bad schedule. They could go 9-3, but that is a bad schedule, and in my opinion, most Missouri fans would not like that year. Number 6. The surprise team, the team that I even was too low on. I had them at 7-5, and I was too low on them. South Carolina. They might have the best defensive line with Dylan Stewart and all those upperclassmen in the SEC. They have a really good running game with Rocket Sanders and Lenore Sellers. Hopefully he can get back healthy because he missed that last game before the bye week. If not, you'll see Robbie Ashford going forward, which he does limit them in the passing game, even though Lenore Sellers is already limited. He limits them even more. I like the defense. I like their running game. Wide receivers are okay, not great, but you don't really need them with this type of team. This team can win 8 or 9 games, which would be a hell of a year. And that's the type of program going forward I think South Carolina should expect. Not that consistently year over year, but 6 to 7 wins, and then that third or fourth year peak to 8 or 9. And Shane Beamer's done a good job this year. He really has. They should be undefeated. They should have beat LSU. They were the better team in that game. If Lenore Sellers doesn't get hurt, they do beat LSU. And speaking of LSU, that is who I have at number 5. They did beat South Carolina. So I have to put them here. I have to honor the results on the field. Even though on a neutral field, I might favor South Carolina. Maybe I should put South Carolina 5, but I can't do it. I have to see if Lenore Sellers is healthy. If Lenore Sellers is healthy, I probably would have him above LSU on a neutral field. But LSU right now is my 5th team. They played, honestly, their best game this week versus South Alabama. They killed them. Best defensive effort as well. Overall, LSU, if you can continue that effort going forward, you may jump up here a couple spots, because I was very unimpressed by my 4th team, and that was Georgia. Georgia is my 4th team in the SEC. Lack of offensive playmakers on the outside at wide receiver. Yes, you had a couple deep balls late, but that was because you're going against, in my opinion, a bad or an average at best secondary in Alabama. And then a lot of push-ups. I'm going to be straight up honest with you that they just did not call. That one on that game, I believe they either the one to take them within a touchdown or push them over the edge and take the lead. That was a clear push-up. The guy is fully extended pushing off and then catches the ball, bringing in, then they score on the next play. I don't understand. I mean, how is Georgia is your best receiver London Humphreys? I like London Humphreys. He's not a number 1 wide receiver. He's like a number 2 or 3 on a really good team. He's probably a number 3 on a really good team. Does not make sense. I always thought Carson Beck was overrated. He's been proving that for me. Thank you. Offensive line is spectacular. Defensive line is not as good as it used to be. Secondary is, I think, really good, but then again, Alabama just destroyed him, so we'll have to see. There's a lot of question marks on this team, and that's why I have them at number 4. Number 3, I do have the Tennessee Volunteers. I did drop them from last week just because I saw Oklahoma play, and I was actually less impressed now with that win. I think Oklahoma's not as good as I thought, and I didn't think they were that good. So that's why I have at number 3. They were on a bye week. Overall, impressed by the physicality and speed on the defense, but I want to see it versus a better offense. I want to see it versus an Alabama. I want to see it versus a Texas. I want to see it versus an LSU on offense. Even a Georgia on offense. I think that's a step up from Oklahoma. Not a big step up, but isn't it a step up? So that is why I have Tennessee 3. Number 2 is my Texas Longhorns. I can't put them at number 1. Very unimpressed in this game versus Mississippi State. Now, going back and watching it, I wasn't unimpressed as I was after the game, but there's clear mistakes to fix, and we have no idea who our number 1 running back is. That is the number 1 key issue for me for Texas. I have no idea who the running back is right now, or running back 1 is. It could be Trey Wisner, could be Jaden Blue, could be Jarrett Gibson. I do not know. We are 5-0, 5 weeks through the season, and I have zero idea what that is. So that is a question to be answered on this team, and a big question, honestly, and it's bigger than the question that I have for my number 1 team, who just went on, or just at home, killed Georgia for the first half, had to hang on for the second half, and that is Alabama. They are back to number 1. I think I had them at 3. I did have them above Georgia. These were my preseason SEC champions, and you see why. I have always liked Jalen Milroe. He was committed to Texas. I liked him then. And you see he's progressed. He's gotten much better as a passer of football, and then he's so good with his legs, guys. He might be the most explosive playmaker in the country with the football in his hands. And honestly, he's probably the Heisman leader right now. I think it's him or Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. Go check out those numbers if you haven't, like 900 yards rushing through 4 weeks for the Boise State running back. But if it's not him, it's Jalen Milroe, who was spectacular in this game. The freshman Ryan Williams making plays as well. The only question I have for them is the secondary. The secondary looked very, very bad in the second half, getting beat deep multiple times. Is that a things to come? Was that a fluke? We will see, but I was very unimpressed with that part still. And I said that going into the game, I was worried Georgia could make plays down the field, even though with the lack of explosive playmakers that they have, because this isn't a great secondary. Did they let up? And that's why it happened? Somewhat unacceptable, but it's human emotion, human nature. I understand it. But if it's not that case and they're just not that good versus a very average Georgia wide receiver group, then they're going to struggle with teams like Texas. It's going to struggle with teams like Tennessee. They're going to struggle with teams like LSU. And honestly, if Oklahoma were to get healthy, they have good wide receivers. They would struggle with them. So it's going to be very interesting going forward. I forgot to say where my tiers start and end. Sorry about that. So for my first overall tier, I would go from Georgia to Alabama. My next tier, guys, I would go from Ole Miss at number 9 to LSU. I think that's where the tier is. So I have 4 tiers, or do I have 5 tiers? I have Mississippi State in their own tier. I have A&M through Florida as another tier. So that's 2. Yeah, 4 tiers. LSU through Ole Miss is another tier. And then Alabama through Georgia is 1 tier. So the upper echelon for me is Alabama through Georgia. I think you'll see that interchange through the season. I don't really see anyone jumping up into that. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but if I had to see a team jump into that, I think I would go South Carolina. I think I might. We'll see what happens this weekend when South Carolina plays Ole Miss. That'll tell me a lot. But Alabama for right now is my number 1 team in the power rankings. So again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. I really appreciate it, guys. This has been another edition of SEC Power Rankings. Join us Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to talk SEC Live. Thank you.